I know it's been a couple of days. I know the SEC championship is coming up Saturday. I know it's a huge game, but I'm not ready to come back down to earth.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime. We will be talking about Gametime in just a little bit. Thank you for making us your first listen. You guys are the absolute best. Jimmy, I'm just not ready to come back down to earth yet. I'll be honest with you. I'm listening to a lot of national coverage this morning. I mean, what a weekend in college football it was just overall. I mean, Washington State didn't go the way we wanted to, but it was an incredible game. The big game, whatever they call it, the game, whatever they call it, Michigan, Ohio State was pretty competitive and fun. Florida State was good for a little bit. I mean, Florida just doesn't have the horses. But of course the Iron Bowl was the top. It was just the bee's knees. And it was so much fun. And I still can't get over it. I've watched that replay a bunch, and every time I'm still nervous.
Yeah, I like seeing the play from the play from a lot of different angles, and yeah, really cool. And it will live in Crimson Tide lore. So crazy that no games this year that Alabama's played in have come down to the end. You know, there hasn't been a game that came down to the final seconds this year, good or bad. And boy did Alabama deliver, you know, at the very end in terms of, hey, you want a good ending? How about this one? But now it's big. It's big. It can't get any bigger. One of the things I'm going to look at today, Luke, off the top of my head, when has the SEC championship game ever been where the winner goes to the playoff? Whichever team wins goes. The loser does not. The loser otherwise would have been. So in other words, so it's literally a quarterfinal. That's what this is. This is literally a quarterfinal playing your way to the semifinal, possibly. Now, I do realize there's a chance Alabama will be left out. And frankly, I don't think that's being talked about enough because I'm for the first time super concerned that Alabama will be left out even if they win. And I hadn't been concerned about that until now, but I'm pretty concerned, to be honest. And but you know, the focus needs to be on beating Georgia. You don't beat Georgia, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would say 2012, obviously the winner plays for the national championship. 2013, I think the winner between Auburn and Missouri would have played for a national championship.
Missouri was in 2013.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Missouri only had one loss.
Yeah,
and
I just didn't remember them being that close to, but because you had to be top two in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Well,
I'm going to go back and research it for sure. Because it can't have happened too often.
No.
That winner in, loser home. Now, famously 2017, 2020, you know, you got two teams, you know, well, 2017 doesn't count because Alabama wasn't even in the SEC championship game. You know, 2020, both teams get in. I mean, 2021, both teams get in.
But
2020, both teams.
2017 does count in the sense that, I mean, had Auburn beaten Georgia, and I mean, Georgia beat them by 21, but I mean, had Auburn beaten Georgia, there would be at least be a case for them to get in. A lot of people think they would have gotten in because they would have beaten number one Georgia at home, then beaten number one Alabama, then beaten Georgia again. And I think they probably would have gotten in even with two losses. They had two losses that year, but they didn't, and they didn't win, and the rest is history. So, but you know, you're right about, I mean, there are still a lot of people out there talking about, well, who gets left out, who does this, because really it all makes sense. Like, well, you can't leave out the Pac-12 champ. Pac-12 been pretty good this year, right? Or you can't leave out the SEC champ. The SEC champ's always in it. And the only ones that would, there's some people saying, gosh, it's hard to even leave Georgia and Alabama out if Alabama were to win.
Let me give everybody an example to show where my concern is, and that's an Alabama loss. And this is what I mean by that. Let's say that this Saturday, every team that's favored to win wins. Whoever's favored to win wins the game. And there's a reason they're favored, right? Let's say Georgia beats Alabama, Florida State beats Louisville, Michigan beats Iowa, Texas beats Oklahoma State, and Oregon beats Washington. They're actually favored by 8 in that game. So all the favorites win, right? Who's getting left out? I would tell you the team that's left out, my opinion, in that case, if all the favorites win, the team that's left out is Texas. So if Texas can be left out, can Alabama be left out? You bet your bottom butt they can be left out. Texas might be about to go 12-1, win the Big 12, beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and be left out because they lost to ultimately a team that's going to be in the top 10, Oklahoma. That's why they're out. A top 10 loss on a neutral field, and they're out. So. Man, I'm telling you, I'm nervous about it. But at the same time, I know this, unless you beat Georgia, I hope Monday, Luke, 1 week from now, I almost hope we're mad that we got left out of the playoff after beating Georgia, because I just want to beat Georgia.
Yeah, I could. That's a weird thing to wish for.
I know, but what I mean is, unless you beat Georgia, it doesn't matter. What are we going to do? Lose to Georgia and then complain the rest of the offseason? Well, had we won the game, we were going to be left out. I'm mad about that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think you're right. I don't want to be left out, but if I'm going to be left out, I want to be left out because I want to be mad that we were left out. You know what I mean? I don't want to be mad that like we didn't beat Georgia, so it wouldn't have mattered. Whatever.
The winner of the Alabama-Georgia game will be favored to win the playoff. That's the thing about Vegas. Vegas is not a data point that I think the committee takes into consideration, but they should in this sense. The winner of the Alabama-Georgia game will be the Vegas favorite to win the playoff.
That's nuts. Look, before we go to our first break, I told you yesterday that there was somebody, by the way, that responded to me about was 4th and goal from the 31, the longest longest 4th down conversion or whatever. And somebody said they went back and found something from the 60s where somebody converted like a 4th and 40 or something. Okay, I'll take your word for it. And I'm not belittling you at all. I'm just saying I wish somebody would look into that and like give me the actual
details
game, because it's still kind of nuts to me that this all happened. Secondly, I said yesterday that I've never seen the same guy intercept a ball with zeros on the clock going into halftime and zeros on the clock at the end of the game. I've never seen that before. The same guy. It's rare that you have 2 interceptions in those 2 moments, much less the same guy. I also had a thought driving home this morning. I tweeted it out, and I thought it'd get more play because I found it to be very interesting. Milroe wears number 4. DJ James of Auburn, who was guarding Isaiah Bond, wears number 4. It was 4th down in the 4th quarter. Alabama was going for 4 in a row against Auburn. I mean, that's a lot of 4s on there, baby.
Now, do we have to call the play Connect 4?
Oh my God, Jimmy, where have you been? Yes. That's great.
Thank you very little. Thank you very little.
Boy, that's good. I like the way you came up with that just on the slide. Speaking of things,
play how you always have the names of kids' games right, ready to go and fire.
That's right, baby. Speaking of games and speaking of the SEC title game coming up, if you want to go to the SEC title game, and you do, you want to check out Gametime, because you shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets to your next event. It shouldn't be a problem. It should be easy. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports and the music and the comedy and the theater events, whatever you want. They got it at Gametime. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. It's so easy. I use it all the time. I've used it for the World Series, used it for Bama, Tennessee, used it for Miami Dolphins against Carolina Panthers. So I've used it that's 3 different kind of things that are all big that I used it for, and I loved it. They have last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you get that ticket. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about some news around the SEC, and we'll mix in some recruiting stuff. First of all, Mike Elko to A&M after a flirtation with Mark Stoops, and apparently there was a revolt by the fans in the same vein as Tennessee had against Greg Schiano, who's now at Rutgers doing okay, led by Clay Travis, by the way, that Tennessee revolt. And so Mark Stoops comes out and saves face by saying, I went home and thought about it. I just can't leave Kentucky. Can't do it. And we all know that, he was probably on the plane ready to go, and he was turned. So Mike Elko's going there from Duke. I think that's a good hire. Let me say this. Was hiring Mike Elko worth paying Jimbo Fisher $76 million? I don't think so, but okay. And this is why I thought firing Jimbo Fisher was kind of iffy. I mean, yes, I'm a big believer in Sun Tzu that says if it must be done eventually, it must be done immediately. At the same time, I don't think Sun Tzu knew that we were going to pay coaches $76 million to go away.
No, that would be quite a surprise to ancient philosophers. I do think that I think Mike Elko is a solid, good hire. I look at it the same way Michigan State's hired Jonathan Smith. Good hire, solid football coach. He's definitely competent. I mean, no question. But look what you're asking him to do. You're asking him at Texas A&M. We're asking Mike Elko to come win national championships. I don't know that he's proven to that degree, right? I mean, Jimbo Fisher did in fact win a national championship at Florida State. That happened. His team that he was coaching won the whole thing. So asking Jimbo Fisher to win a national championship is kind of a reasonable ask. He's done it before. Mike Elko has won 8 or 9 games at Duke a couple times in only 2 years of doing the job. It's a big ask, but hey, I also feel this, and people didn't believe me, and I think there's this idea, Luke, that a lot of fans, even smart fans, have, that there are these billionaire boosters that just write checks and just how much you want, just fill in the blank. I'll pay for whatever. That's not reality. That's not what happens at all. And here's the deal. They were paying Jimbo Fisher $10 million, which is a lot of freaking money to pay your head football coach, Luke. Here's what's not going to be a coincidence. Now add what Texas A&M is going to be paying Jimbo Fisher per year out of Texas A&M money, $7 million. That's what they're paying him per year. What are they going to pay Mike Elko? My guess is $3 million, because that's what Texas A&M can afford, $10 million a year. I think once that they fired Fisher and had to pay him, they were severely limiting the pool of coaches that they could hire. And I think in part the Stoops deal might have fallen because he wasn't willing to take a significant pay cut to work for more of a national championship level program. I don't think that A&M, just look at the pool of coaches that they interviewed and were seriously considering. They weren't the big names with the big price tags. It was Elko. It was Jeff Traylor that they interviewed, who might have been, by the way, the better hire, but you didn't have to pay Traylor money, not Jimbo Fisher money. So I'm just saying, I think money was a significant factor there in A&M, and money all over. The Indiana story to me is not getting nearly enough attention, because that's the real problem in college football right now, that the university can pay Tom Allen $20 million not to coach, but their collective has no money in it all, and they can't recruit because they don't have any football collective money. And Indiana was talking about that at the door. It's because the schools can pay it. Yeah. But fans pay for the player. Isn't that crazy? We use the word collective. Fans are paying the money to pay the players, and fans don't want to do that. They did it at first in 2021 because it was a novelty, but now fans don't want to pay the salaries of players. The
Let me ask you,
NFL would have gone out of business.
what if there was an end around there? What if Indiana was hiring a coach? I don't know who. I mean, whoever. And the coach said, look, you're going to pay me $5 million a year, but you're going to write me a check for $7 million. I, in turn, will put $2 million of that into our collective. Would that be an end around?
It's definitely an end around. That's a good question for lawyers that that have a lot of word I can't say on the air. Let's say intestinal fortitude. I mean,
Testicular fortitude.
but that's coming. I mean, that's coming because the schools have money. That's how they can afford these coaches and afford these buyouts. What isn't funded as well as people think are collectives, because that money comes from the fans. And the fans are like, hey, we already pay the school money for tickets and seats and jerseys and scholarship money that you wanted. But I'm not paying the player. Somebody else is going to have to do that.
It's kind of funny. Look, I know you want to talk about silly problems. I was trying to think of the most diplomatic way to say this without getting in trouble by Locked On. But it's funny. I grew up on Lake Martin. I'm a member at Willow Point, but I don't play golf anymore. I quit playing golf. It hurt my back. I didn't enjoy it, whatever. But I've stayed a member because my parents were one of the first ones down here. They were, one of the first members, all this other stuff, right? And so I joined the club, whatever. And they assess us, the members. It's not an ownership. It's not an equity club. So, but they assess us like when they do some renovations, they assess us a fee, like, we're making capital improvements. So you have to help pay for that. And my thing is,
I don't play golf.
Yeah. I was like, number one, I don't play golf. Number two, I don't own any of it. Why do I have to pay for it? And I mean, but they have you by the short and girlies because you're like, okay, they're like, you can get out if you want to. And I'm like, well, I don't want to get out because I like it, using the summertime. They got a great place for my kids to go. And I'll go there and eat and do some other stuff. I mean, but it's sort of the same thing, right? Like the universities have all this money. I mean, Harvard's got what, like a $60 billion endowment. I mean, I'm pulling Harvard out. Alabama's got a big endowment too. I mean, $2 billion or whatever. And then the university's like, I just got an email from the university, like it's giving season. We need you to give. I'm like, y'all make more in interest in the time it takes me to produce this podcast than I make in a year. So
obviously this can be solved one day, and I guess it's coming when the university can pay money into the collective. When that happens, a lot of that is solved, or is it? but the point is, the current system that we have is just unsustainable, and we said that here on this show 3 years ago in 2021 when this all began. Is this system is not going to work. And we see now pretty much that it's sort of not working for a lot of places and soon is not to work any place.
It just hadn't fallen apart yet.
Yeah,
it's like if you brush your teeth but don't floss, you'll get by for a while, but eventually you're going to have a piece of broccoli hung up in there for a while. It's going to rot your gums out. I mean, don't tell me about it.
That's a perfect analogy.
Sometimes my analogies just don't go anywhere. And also, while I was in the middle of my country club analogy, I was like, there's somebody saying, screw you, Luke. What a weird flex. And what they don't understand.
Bama problem. Luke's Bama problems.
What they don't understand is that, like, I still, this shirt is like 4 years old. Like, all my clothes are old. I say I'm a member of this country club. At the same time, I'm like getting my shoes as hand-me-down. So, I mean, anyway, I'm not trying to flex on anybody. I promise you. All right, Jimmy, when we come back, I guess we're going to start talking. I want to keep talking about Mississippi State hire. And then I also want to talk a little bit about Georgia, because we're going to get ready for that here shortly. But right now, I want to tell everybody about FanDuel. Love me some FanDuel. You will too. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150, y'all, if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's absolutely no better time than right now to get in on the action. This app is so easy to use, Jimmy can use it. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads and player props and over-unders and much more. They got NBA, they got college basketball, they got college football, they got futures, they got everything you want, Heisman stuff, whatever. So all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/locked-on. Right now, there's an NFL game tonight, Bears and Vikings, I think. So go check that out. FanDuel.com/locked-on, FanDuel.com/locked-on. And FanDuel is, of course, as we all know, an official partner of the NFL. So, Jimmy, we ran a little long on that segment about SEC stuff, and we also didn't mention recruiting, but Jeff Lebby hired by Mississippi State. Look, I tend to think this is a good hire. I've seen some blowback on it because of his tie-ins with the Baylor stuff that went on what seems like a gazillion years ago. I mean, I feel like it's a good hire. I'm fine with it. I'm not like anti-Jeff Lebby. He's been hired by a lot of other places since then. So why is it so much different that Mississippi State hires him as a head coach? I mean, it's not like they hired Jerry Sandusky, okay? I mean, it's just not the same thing. And frankly, I don't even know all the specifics, but I know this. If Jeff Lebby were as knee-deep in this as some people act like he is, I don't think anybody would have hired him at all. So I feel like
schools are
probably made a good hire.
Schools aren't just purposefully wading into that level of controversy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more vetted than people would think. I think it's a good. I think it's a risk reward. I mean, risk reward. I love this. It's a gamble because he's never been a head coach. It's a gamble, but I won't be surprised, Luke, if we look back 4 years from now, 4 years from today, and we look back and we say, boy, Mississippi State hired Texas A&M.
Good point. And, he was the OC at Ole Miss, was he not? So, I mean, he's been in Mississippi before. He knows a little bit about the area. He knows about
he worked for Gus. He worked for Gus, I think, at Central Florida, worked for Lane, now worked for Venables. He's an offensive innovator. Now, he's one of these up-tempo, go things. Whenever somebody, an OC like him is hired, my first question all the time is this. I suppose he's going to run his own offense? I mean, right? He's going to run the offense? Because if you didn't hire Lebby to run his own offense, then why'd you hire him? I mean, that's why he's famous. That's why people know who he is. That's why Mississippi State hired him, because of the Jeff Lebby offense. Is Jeff Lebby going to farm it out? I mean, I don't think so. My guess is he's going to run his offense. And I do think it's challenging in 2023 for the head coach to be that involved in the day-to-day that you're actually what amounts to your own offensive coordinator.
By the way, I looked up the old Sun Tzu quote that we talked about earlier. It's what must be done eventually must be done immediately unless it costs you $76 million. I looked that up. I can't believe he was talking in American dollars at the time. That's wild.
That was impressive. I think it's cool that he knew Jimbo Fisher even back then. That's impressive. That's impressive. We ought to read more of his stuff. If he knew Jimbo. He's
got some good stuff, man. I love it. I love it when he writes a guest article for Athlons in the summer. But the other thing, okay, let's talk a little bit about recruiting. We mentioned yesterday Ryan Williams goes to Auburn. Some of the Auburn sites were like going nuts. They feel like he's part of the freeze five of wide receivers. I do believe Auburn gets Cam Coleman. I do believe that'll be a good pickup for them.
Agreed.
And I believe they will have 4 good wide receivers. They'll have Bryce Kane, who I like a lot. They'll have Malcolm Simmons, who I've seen several times. I think Malcolm Simmons is a great player, probably a little underrated. Obviously, Perry Thompson. And I think Cam Coleman. That is a great lineup. I think all 4 of those receivers are better than any receiver they have on campus right now. I think Ryan Williams sticks with Alabama. I think he reclassifies. And I feel better after Andrew Bone's update. Of course, could he be lying to everybody? Of course he could. Nothing's a lock. I mean, Cam Coleman could stick with Texas A&M for all I know. Mike Elko might prioritize him number 1 and spend $1 gazillion to get him. I don't know, but I'm just telling you what I think. also feel a lot better about Jeremiah Beeman after an interview. I think that was with Joseph Hastings. So
Right.
I feel good about both of those. Meanwhile, Jimmy, swinging over into Georgia, you mentioned it yesterday. Ladd McConkey was out of that game against Georgia Tech, as was Brock Bowers. Those are two key components to their offense. Now, they still won the game, and they only won by 8, and people are making too much of that because that's also a rivalry game. And, Georgia, just like us, has to play one of their biggest rivals before they play arguably the biggest game of the year. So it's hard to get up for those games. And Georgia also just ran a pretty good gauntlet where they played, Missouri. That was a big game. And they played Tennessee.
Ole Miss.
So, I mean, I give them slack like I give Alabama slack against Auburn playing in Jordan-Hare. But, I think McConkey and Bowers will both play against Alabama. And I'm leaning right now, Jimmy, I'm not making a prediction until later on in the week. I am still leaning to select Georgia using head versus heart. I obviously want Alabama to win. I obviously would love for it to happen. I just feel like Georgia's better. And, you and I always say you play your best once or twice, you play your worst once or twice. Everything else in between is what you are. Part of me is like, we hadn't played our best game. And then part of me is like, what if we have? And we've already used it.
Maybe we have.
Yeah.
Maybe we did against Middle Tennessee. I mean, maybe. I don't know who I'm going to pick. I will say that this kind of rhymes up with what you're saying. This is one of the few times, maybe the only time, but definitely a time when you ask yourself, is Alabama good enough to win this game? Is Alabama good enough to beat Georgia? Is Alabama better than Georgia? Can Alabama win the game? That's not something that we ask in the Nick Saban era very often. It's sometimes 0 times a year, sometimes once or twice a year, hardly never ever 3 times a year. But this is a week where we ask, is Alabama good enough to win the game? And that's a different feeling, right? It's a different feeling going into the game when you're not sure whether Alabama's good enough to win. And hey, the way I look at it makes it a little fun, right? I mean, it's a heck of a challenge. The downside is you don't get it done and go to a New Year's Six bowl at 11-2. But hey, I think it's a heck of an opportunity. I give Alabama a better chance to win this game than I gave Alabama in 2021. In 2021, I didn't give Alabama much of a chance really to win the game. I wasn't optimistic they could do it a week after that terrible Auburn performance. This year, I feel that Georgia is more beatable than they were in 2021. And let's remember, Alabama did, in fact, win in 2021. So I'm giving Alabama, I feel like Alabama can win this game. But I fully respect what Georgia is and the 22 dudes they put on the field. And it's going to be a heck of a challenge. And Carson Beck, in particular, probably not getting enough attention in this one. And he's very, very good.
He's really good. And boy, I love Jalen Milroe. And Jalen Milroe, his best plays are better than Carson Beck's best plays. But Jalen Milroe's worst plays are a lot worse. Carson Beck's is much more steady. And, you can't – boy, I don't want to bet against Jalen Milroe right now, though. I don't want to bet against him. I'm so on board with Jalen Milroe. And by the way, there's still people in the comments that think you and I don't like Jalen Milroe. Would
Where
you
do they get
stop
that from?
that? Please stop that.
It's not even – I mean, I know they don't read a lot of what I write on BOL. The weird thing is on BOL, I get the other end. I mean, the BOL, I'm too pro Milroe. I'm too pro Milroe and the other job, and this one I'm anti. I'm the same dude on both sides.
Let's also say this: Jalen Hurts was a Saban bot. Then Tua comes in, and Tua is just a sort of the all-American kid. I mean, everybody just. I mean, Miami loves Tua now. He's hard not to love Tua. Tua is just Tua. Then there's Mac Jones, who, again, we all love. Mac Jones is great. I'm sorry it's not working on the NFL, but it's not. Then there's Bryce Young, who is just so cool. He's the coolest of all the quarterbacks we've had. But then there's Milroe, who is the Bammerest of all of them. Milroe is the guy saying Roll Tide at the end of all the interviews. He is a Bammer, and I love him. I can't say enough good things. when we talk about some things that need work on or things that can't happen against Georgia, all we're doing is pointing out the obvious. I have never seen a quarterback 2 times in one game go well beyond the line of scrimmage and throw a pass. I've never seen that happen before. And in weird fashion, an Auburn quarterback did it too. I'm just saying it's okay to point out some things that Milroe doesn't do 100% correctly instead of just sunshine pumping everybody. I love the guy. Milroe to me is like a fan playing quarterback. He really is. I mean, that's how the way he does an interview is the way I think I would do an interview.
We got some athletic fans.
Have you ever seen the running of the Gumps every year?
That's true. In awe. I've watched that each year it happened in awe. I think Jalen Milroe I would pick him right now to say, I think Jalen Milroe will win the 2024 Heisman Trophy. I think he might be the best player in college football next year. That's how crazy high I am on him. I'm ready to start wagering on Jalen in the 2024 Heisman race. At the same time, I question fairly, I think, whether Jalen Milroe can win this game. Can Jalen Milroe beat the best team in the country? I don't know that he's ready to do that. I don't know. I think again, it gets back to what we're talking about with Mike Elko. It's a heck of an ask. I mean, A&M's asking him to win the national championship, not, hey, we need you to win more games than Jimbo. No, they want to win the national championship. What we're asking Jalen Milroe to do Saturday is, Jalen, we need you to beat the number 1 defense in the SEC and beat the 2-time defending national champions. We're asking you to do that. It's a big ask, but that doesn't mean that I'm not sky high on Jalen Milroe and his future and what an incredible job he's done for Alabama this year. And the fact that I think he might be the best football player in the country next year.
All right, that's going to do it for today's pod. Thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate all your comments, as always, even the ones that disagree with us. I don't care how wrong you are. Anyway, we'll talk again soon. Talk again tomorrow. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.